What's up, guys? Your favorite player one, Richard here, and our barrels are ready for the next part of our barrel bar build. And in this video, we're going to be focusing primarily on the exterior cosmetics of our barrels. Simply put, we are going to sand our staves, polish our rings, and do everything that we need to do to the outside to get us ready for our next part, which is to cut these beasts in half. So, you know what to do. Grab your controllers, pour yourself a dram, and let's get into it. As I had mentioned, this video is going to primarily focus on cleaning up the exterior of each one of these barrels. And I really hate to do that because they have so much character and individuality amongst themselves, whether that be the amount of seepage or leakage of the whiskey from the barrel you see here on the staves, the misshapen or misaligned rings, and even how these rings bite into the individual staves. But at the end of the day, this is going to go inside of the house, a communal space where family and friends and visitors will probably end up seeing it, and it needs to look appealing to be inside of a house. And so that is what we're going to be focusing in on today. For our sanding portion, I'm going to simply use my orbital sander and a variety of different grit sanding papers. Now, I have 3 here just at the house, and I'm just going to use these to keep life simple. Now, starting off with the coarser grit, which is going to be 40, I'm going to primarily use this on our spots where we have just a lot of seepage that has leaked out of the barrel. For the rest of the barrel, I'm going to primarily use this 80 and then come back behind it for, with our 120. Now, for those harder spots to get things removed, I did pick up this little circular sander that has a connection here that fits perfectly into my little drill. So that way we can remove those harder to remove spots. And of course, it's always important that you have some eye safety. And with all of the particulate and sawdust, I am going to go inside and get a mask. So one of the cool things that I've been coming across on these barrels is going to be the staves actually breaking. And you can see where some whiskey has even seeped out. As the temperatures fluctuate in the rick house or the warehouse, the water moves in and out of the staves and sometimes can cause cracks in the staves. But with all the pressure of the staves and the bands keeping everything together, not much of the liquid will end up coming out. Another interesting thing that I came across was this little wood plug here. Now, throughout the maturing process and aging process, oftentimes what will happen is the master distiller or employees will come in, they'll drill holes, take a small amount of the liquid out to test, see proof, see flavor, all those things, just to kind of see where the whiskey is in its aging process. Now, it has been a few days since I've last pressed record on this barrel bar project, and during that time, I've been able to accomplish a couple of things. Now, the first and most obvious is going to be the sanding. I was able to get both barrels sanded to what I was looking for. And it did take a little bit of time, probably about 2 to 3 hours each barrel. Now you might be thinking that's a lot of time. Well, I did go over each barrel with 3 different grits of sandpaper, a 40 grit, an 80 grit, and a 120. Now that 120 is probably not necessary, but I just didn't want anyone to risk getting a potential splinter if they were leaning against the barrel or anything like that. Now you may see that there's some discoloration like this barrel here, and that is perfectly fine for me because I like that just individual character that each barrel possesses. Now I did also go through and knock a bunch of the rust off of each of these rings, and I'll go back and paint over them and all that stuff later, so that way it all looks just uniform with each one of these barrels. Now you can see that I've already started the next part of the process with this barrel preparation, at least on the exterior part, and that is screwing in the rings to the individual staves. Now, some of you might be asking, well, why do you do that? Well, if you think about it, each one of these staves has been making contact with liquid for anywhere from 4 to 8 years, or maybe more, just depending on what was in the barrel. And as they start to dry out, what they will start to do is kind of condense on themselves and fall forward. Well, if I'm going to use this for something that's going to be a little bit more permanent, I want to make sure that it holds its shape. And so I need to screw each one of these staves into place into the rings. Now to do that, what I have done is gone out and picked up some self-tapping screws. Now you could do this, just the old school way, drilling a hole and coming back behind it with a screw. That just seems really time consuming to me. And so I found these self-tapping screws, 3/4 of an inch, should be more than enough depth to get into through the rings and into the individual staves. Now, the ones that I have also have these flat tops here, so that way they're not going to be protruding out or catching on anyone's pants or legs whenever they are sitting at the bar, standing next to the bar. Now, the plan, like I mentioned before, is to go ahead after I have all these screwed in. I will eventually go back behind with some spray paint or something like that, do black or some sort of dark color over each one of these rings just to make sure that it's a little bit more uniform. Now, I've already got one barrel behind me done. It took me maybe 45 minutes to an hour to go through and do this. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the second barrel, hopefully get this done relatively quickly before moving on to the next step. The barrel has been sanded, the staves have been secured in place to the rings, and we are just about ready to cut this in half. Now, one thing that I did not include or film was I had to secure a piece of plywood to the top of the barrel head. And the reason for that is oftentimes when you go to cut these, since the barrel head is made up of individual staves or pieces of wood, oftentimes they will kind of fall in on themselves. So by securing it with a piece of plywood, it's going to just prevent that. I will cut that in half and we'll put it back into the barrel once it has been split. And that'll just provide a little bit more rigidity. And then also when I go to secure the top and bottom pieces, this is just going to allow me to have something that I can drill into. So those things will stay in place. Now, to figure out where I'm going to make my cuts, I need to do a couple of things first. The most important of those is to determine where the center of the barrel is. Now, I have found that the easiest way to do that is to figure out where the diameter is and to just figure out that halfway point. For me, the diameter or the widest point of my barrel, at least at the top, is going to be 22 1/8 to 22 1/4 inches wide. Now, just halving that number or finding the radius, marking that point should give me the center of the barrel. So whenever I am ready to cut, no matter where I run my tape measure or my line through, as long as it goes through that center point, I should be good and get equal halves of barrels once I cut it. Now, the next thing I need to do is determine on how I'm going to cut the staves and the metal rings. Now, there are two ways that I approach this, and I'll tell you which one I went with in just a second. The first way is to simply draw my line through that midpoint. Go ahead and make my cuts through the metal bands first, which is going to relieve some of the tension, and then go back behind it with a jigsaw or some sort of skill saw, circular saw, and cut the staves. Now, for me, like I mentioned before, I'm not the best as far as woodworking goes, and that seems like a lot of room for error, which I tend to kind of live in that space there. But the easiest way, if you are able to do so, is to figure out where two staves are actually touching side by side, which I was able to do. So in theory, if I go to cut the metal, what will end up happening is once all that tension is relieved, those two staves are going to separate naturally, and then I won't have to make any additional cuts. So that is going to be the way that we end up going with this particular project. One side down, one to go. Not gonna lie to you, this was a little nerve-wracking because I've never used a grinder before and wasn't prepared for when I started to split the rings for them to pop because of the pressure. But I mean, other than a little bit of cleaning up on the rings, I don't think I did too bad of a job. All right, so the barrels have been cut in half. It's really cool just to get to see the character of the inside of the barrel, all the char that's there that helps to give the whiskey its flavor. All right, guys, well, I've already accomplished quite a bit with this barrel bar build, but I've just begun to scratch the surface. See what I did there? Sanding, scratch the surface. We've got the exterior sanded and looking the way that I want it to. Still need to stain it, still need to paint the rings, but we'll do that once we get a little bit farther in the build. The rings are secured to the staves. The barrel itself is already cut in half, and I've already started to work on some of the next steps. And you can see right there, I've got the tape measure out. I've got a couple of hurdles that I have now encountered that the barrel is cut in half, but we'll address those in the next video. But I certainly appreciate you sticking until the end. Be on the lookout for the next update. I am doing small little updates as YouTube shorts and also posting them on Instagram. So if you want to see kind of in-betweens or a little bit more candid experiences, check those out as well. All right, as always, thank you for sticking until the end. I'm your favorite player, One Richard. Have a good one.